He's wearing it as a badge of honor. Yes. All right. Okay. Uh, we have apologies for Mr. Terry Long, not with us today. All right. Members, just a housekeeping. We have minutes of the meetings held on October the 30th and November the 6th. These were sent out to members electronically. Hope members had a chance to look at them. If there are no corrections, I'd ask for confirmation of the minutes. Member Stewart and Member Dunn. And no matters arising from the minutes. All right, members, today we're going to deliberate with the Ministry of Tourism. The intention is that we'll receive their report, a book, but additionally there were some questions asked. What I think it may suit us to do, members, is that our order paper here, it says,
These are the people from the ministry.
oh, yeah, we have, on the order paper, we have, not on this order paper, in the book, it goes through Tourist Board, JAMVAC, TPDCO, TF, and then the others, the Convention Center, and the other, Bath, etc. I intend to take it in that order as we go along. And if we could, members, incorporate the questions, and whatever questions do not arise by the end, we'll take those. All right. With that, we could invite them, the ministry, to come in. All right. Morning, yes. Morning, members from the Ministry of Tourism. Yes.
Morning, Chairman.
Yes, yes. What we're going to do today is just, as in the book, we'll just go through the report that you have it. We'll take TPD. Give you an opportunity at the start to introduce your team and to give an overview, whatever it is, and then we'll go through as the book has it, the ministry, JTB, JAMVAC, TPDCO, TF, convention center, etc., and go through. Well, I think you were asked today only for TF, TPDCO, JTB, and JAMVAC. Am I correct? Okay, but we'll take it in that order as it is in the book, just for the flow, and allow you to give. So, over to you, and you can introduce your team.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the PAAC. We thank you for again allowing us this opportunity to provide a status report on the operations of the ministry and the agencies that fall under our purview. We have our team here today from the ministry. I have Mr. David Dobson, Senior Director for Technical Services, and Ms. Maud Chambers, Manager for Finance and Accounts. They're both sitting to the back. From the TPDCO, we have Dr. Andrew Spencer, Executive Director, and Mr. Ovell Brown, Acting Financial Controller. From the Jamaica Tourist Board, Mr. Donovan White, Director of Tourism, and Mr. Errol Jones, Chief Financial Officer. From the Tourism Enhancement Fund, we have Dr. Kerry Wallace, Executive Director, Mr. Johan Rampier, Director of Projects, Mrs. Francine James Prince, Director of Finance. And from Jamaica Vacations, we have Mrs. Joy Roberts, Executive Director, and Ms. Kenisha Lumsden, Director of Finance. Mr. Chairman, overall tourism continues to do well as an economic driver. I am sure you would be aware of the latest report from the PIOJ that sets out the growth numbers, and you'd have seen that from the services industry, the increase was 1.6%. That was the average of 8 subsectors under services industry, and of the 8, tourism's contribution was 5.3%, the highest. The lowest was 0.2%, and of course the highest was 5.3%, which was the tourism's component. So we think that we are doing well as we seek to assist in the economic growth of this country. We have the data here we can share with you. At the level of the ministry and its agencies, we are well on our way to accomplishing most of our targets as outlined in the report that was submitted. From the ministry in particular, our 2 main highlights year to date would have been the completion of the Tourism Workers Pension Act 2019 and the completion of the St. Thomas Destination Development and Management Plan. For fiscal year 2019-20, our total budget was $11.6 billion, and our spend as at the end of October, which is just a little past the half-year mark, was $6.6 billion. That is consistent with our projections for this time of the year. Mr. Chairman and committee members, we have submitted a comprehensive report. We have responded to the questions raised in letter of October 23rd, as well as the emails of October 28th and November 4th. The agencies are here with me, and we are all prepared to elaborate further on any area deemed necessary. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Are there any questions on the overview for the ministry?
Just wanted to know, Chair, looking at, even though we'd have the increase in visitors and stopover visitors, in the St. James, Westmoreland, Hanover area, the state of emergency, even though where we see an increase in spending on the marketing and brand correction, really, how has it affected? I mean, what extra is the JTB doing really to that brand correction from the state of emergencies and the spend that goes with it?
If you allow me, I will ask Director of Tourism to respond to that question.
One second.
Oh, there we go. Morning again. To the question in relation to state of emergency and what we have or continue to do, it really is and has been an effort based in the marketplace, addressing the media queries, but also always providing a clear position that the matter concerning security is a national issue, is a matter that we take very seriously in Jamaica, not just for the visitors who come to Jamaica, but also for the preservation of all of Jamaica. And that we continue to provide through our product development company, TPD Co., a clear strategy in relation to destination assurance for all visitors who come to the country. And that has, over time, that message has resonated well in all our marketplaces. From a brand marketing and brand advertising perspective, that is something that we are still in the throes of finishing a complete global campaign. But whilst we are doing that, we have maintained interim advertising campaigns in all the marketplaces to ensure that not only are we front and center with the brand where people seek travel, but we have also tried to ensure that we continue to depict Jamaica in the best light possible. And in so doing, we have over the last 12 to 18 months grown our global demand for the destination by some 15% to now to a level of about 824 million searches for Jamaica globally in 2019.
A couple of questions, just for clarity. Yes. In the report, we saw that there's been a little up and down in the Travel and Tourism Competitive Index. And we had improved, and then we have fallen again. Have you analyzed that to determine what the situation is there?
Chairman, the truth is that many of the indicators are not really within the purview of tourism per se. It's other circumstances that affect the country overall, and that causes the numbers. So we monitor, but we are not able to intervene per se. And we have had discussions with the team in Jamaica before.
But did you find out what were the issues that caused us to fall?
Issues are general. Issues pertaining to crime, pertaining to traffic and general things, not tourism-specific things. Environmental matters, rather than
But
tourism.
normally they give it in the specific areas. Have you
Yeah.
had a chance to do the analysis of
We did
this
it.
one?
We did the last analysis. We're working on the current one.
Yes.
Right.
As I said, in the 2017 survey, we had moved to 69 up from 76. Now, later on, we have fallen back to 76. I'm just saying, they're usually specific areas. I know
It's
that we had it once before, and it was because we did not have our UNESCO designated
Designation
areas
heritage
were
sites,
not
right.
sufficient. I'm just saying, this fall, have we gone in? There was a committee that had been set up to analyze it, to ensure that our competitiveness, we were always moving, and it was an inter-ministerial. Is that still up and running? Are we dealing with it in that way?
That is still up and running. And even after we had the designation of the Blue and John Crow Mountain National Park, it didn't move the target for us because one wasn't sufficient. You know, things like ease of doing business are some of the indicators. So there are wide range indicators that are really not tourism specific. But we are reviewing the indicators now, and we try as far as possible to ensure that tourism is at the best place it can be, and hopefully with the rest of the economy working towards improvement, that in time we'll see numbers changing. But the truth is that it's really a wide range of extraneous things that they use to measure. It's not tourism specific at all.
In number 3 in your outcomes,
What page is that, Chairman?
page 6.
Yes, sir. Number 3?
Number 3, the
Yeah.
direct employment in the sector.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the numbers over the last few years? I'm not certain. I see here direct employment is at 124,000. Is that, have you been tracking those numbers? That numbers did not seem to fit into what going over the annualized. It would be interesting. Have you looked at it year by year and see what the growth has been?
Chairman, Jamaica Tourist Board reports on numbers every year. So these would have been the numbers that we report. And there's been steady growth in the amount of direct employees.
We would, no, I would agree with that,
Yeah.
but that's why I'm trying to just get an idea. Maybe the tourist board, do we have or can you just check what the numbers have been in direct employment over the last 5 years?
I can have that checked and circulated, Chairman. I don't have that number with me today.
Yeah, just to get that number. And why I ask is that I think this is important. One of the issues we're having is as the sector grows, we want to see how exponentially the direct employment grows in it. And it'd be interesting to just look at the numbers over the last few years. The last question, again, we have increased visitor arrivals, and this has been something that has come up a couple of times, 5 million by 2022. This number includes both cruise and yeah. But if that's the case, again, over the last 5 years, could you give me just what the total number has been over the last 5 years? That should be a quick check, just to get an idea, just from memory.
Okay, Chairman. We will provide for the committee the breakout of growth in direct employment and tourism arrivals, cruise and
Yeah,
stopover
just
for a 5-year
comparative
period.
numbers over the year.
We will submit that
And the total
information.
numbers, you could probably just give probably easier for you to, your charts usually just have a 10-year. You could just do the 10-year
Okay.
combined figure. I think it's on the website.
Just on a previous earlier question that I asked, and looking at Appendix B on page 46 of the report. Yeah, which is showing comparative calendar year 2018-2019 with stopovers and cruise ship. And looking at from 2018 down, a consistent reduction in cruise ship passengers, which is what your table is showing us. What would be the rationale or explanation what is happening, why we're seeing now the reductions that we're seeing here in cruise ship passengers?
Again, member, if I could defer the question to Joy Roberts, my colleague from JAMVAC, simply because JAMVAC today handles the marketing of the cruise side of the tourism arrival portfolio. So I'd ask Joy if she could just input on that, please.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Okay, as you would recall, in 2017, there were those great storms on the other side, on the eastern itinerary. So a lot of those ships came to Jamaica. So there was a bump up. We had like a 19% increase that year in arrivals, cruise arrivals. So what we've found is that in the subsequent years, as the other ports came back on board, there has been a reduction.
Okay.
So we're next year we'll be probably back on par with what we were before, just increasing slightly there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, can you give me an idea of what the numbers were
In 2017? Okay. In 2017, we had 1.9 million passengers, cruise passengers.
That was the same year of the...
Right. The year before, we had 1.6.
That's 2016.
Right.
2017, you said 1.9.
Right.
So a 300,000 difference.
Right.
Right. And but you're looking at the calendar year, and that is for the calendar year.
Yes.
But you're projecting for the calendar year for this year down back to 1.6.
Yeah, we're going to be about 1.5, near 1.6. And we also had a challenge in Falmouth where the mega vessels, RCL, had moved the larger vessels to Mexico and Domrep. And some of those.
Because, and why I'm asking, I'm just being facetious, but
No, man.
normally, when you, even though coming back down, you would have done something to hold some of those repeat customers or to market Jamaica overall to hold back some of those that you would not really drop back down to those normal numbers, but still growing while the numbers come down normally.
Okay, one of the greatest challenge we have is that when a Oasis type vessel moves that has 8,000, 68,000 passengers on it. So even if you replace that vessel with a smaller vessel, you're still not able to catch up. But we're hoping by 2021 to be able to get those vessels. Some of them have already started coming back.
What was the reason for them moving?
Well, there's an itinerary problem. There's a challenge with the itinerary. We're on the western side of the itinerary, and most of these large ships want like a 4-stop. And at the moment, they can only do 3. So this is why Cayman is very important to us, because once Cayman comes on board, then there would be an extra stop for them. And we're looking forward to that.
Does the issue of the states of emergency have any, with this, especially for cruise ships, since they are not the ones within the confine of a, no?
No, I don't think, we haven't had too much fallout from that. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, the demand has gone up with cruise now.
All right, thank you.
But would it also be safe, good morning everyone, would it also be safe to say that with Port Antonio seeing some arrivals now, Port Royal is to come on board shortly, that the figures for maybe 2019, 2020 will be much different from the 1.6 or the 1.59 as you suggested?
I think for 2020, there will be a slight bump, but I think we'll really see the effect of the additional cruise ports in 2021. Remember that most cruise lines need 2 years in advance to, put their vessels out. But what will help us is that a lot of them have new bills.
Just following on that obvious question, they are 2 years in advance, so you would have your bookings for Port Royal now?
Well, at the moment, because there has been so much back and forth with Port Royal over the years, most of the cruise lines were on a wait and see, let's see what's happening. We do have ships, we have the Marilla TUI cruise coming in January, February, March, April. They'll be making a stop each month there.
In
January 20th, we'll have TUI.
Right.
Stop in
Port Royal, right.
Right. That was the one that had the discussion with from some time ago. So they'll come how often?
How often?
They're coming
once a month.
So they come once a month for 3 months, 4 months?
4 months. They actually do multi-portings, so they'll come to Port Royal and then go around.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's not the ship that used to go to Port Antonio?
No, it was more Montego Bay and sometimes Ocherus.
Right, Montego Bay. So it is going to take that stop.
Right.
Do you have any other ships booked at this point?
Not definitively, but we do have people that are interested. We do have lines that are interested.
Well, as I said, but in your mind it's probably more sporadic thing,
right,
because there's nothing, no one has put it on the itinerary yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Just on the Port Royal, and we know that that project is being initiated by the Port Authority, but I remember the last time that they were here, we were asking about just the involvement of the community of Port Royal as a product itself. And we were told at the time that Port Royal may not be, but at least it is a port and it is closer to Ocherus, it is this, it is that. But and I've not seen, especially, you have the old museum, which is the old hospital, the infrastructure upgrades for Port Royal. Where in the mix of things will Port Royal be in this development of that floating dock and everything? What is the product that we're really selling?
Okay. Well, as we had a meeting with Prof yesterday to be updated, but as it is, because Marilla is a ship that has already been coming to Jamaica over the years, they have a tour operator that they work with who is already selling tours around Kingston and even to Ocherus. So that is happening. As it relates to Port Royal itself, there are different phases of work that's being done. Initially, We understand there's a Fort Charles that is being fixed up. There are storyboards. There's work that is being done, and it will be phased out.
And Chairman, from day one you heard the residents complaining, and too often we build products and the wider community, the benefit to the wider community, because there's a sewage problem there. There's a lot of issues that are long-standing issues which will take quite a bit of investment in bringing it up to a world class. Just as we complain about Trelawney, Falmouth, you build a pier, but then the residents complain about the tourists coming off of the bus into the town, so now you're building out another attraction right in the town to get the town itself involved. And what I would hate to see is to see Port Royal being left until down the road. And it in itself is an attraction. So are we going to be making the investment parallel to while the ship's coming on that way till 10, 15 years down the road, then we say, boy, we have to put in the sewage. This is after it becomes a problem.
That's correct. So you
what
spoke
is correct,
about,
that we're waiting 10, 15
No, we're not waiting 10, no. So you spoke about sewage. There is PAJ along with the NWC is working. There will be a sewage plant for the port area, and they're also working on a sewage plant for the community of Port Royal.
We have a time frame on that?
They didn't give us that.
They wouldn't have it. But
yeah, it would be. But we could get the information and get it to you. If you want.
Remember, I think it is something that we have to follow up on. Yeah. There has been a lot of public discourse about it, and one of the difficulties is that I think that we've all of us are in agreement. We think Port Royal project could be an excellent project. What we're concerned about is the methodology, the implementation of this project. There have been cries from the community about the level of communication, consultation that has taken place. There were specific agreements made, I think, with NEPA and the other government agencies about the concomitant infrastructure that had to be put in place, which included sewage, etc., which seems to be lagging behind. And of course, the actual town itself, they have a saying that nothing kills a bad product like good marketing. And the fact of the matter is, if we take a Port Royal and don't do the necessary work in Port Royal and then flood the place in an initial thing with visitors, you're going to have a problem if you have not done the work in there to get a product that is of the level that we want it to be. And I think everyone in Port Royal recognizes that. Initially, we had started some work there. We had upgraded Fort Charles, Naval Hospital. There was a series of projects that would create their own attractions, and work had started with the people to do some work in the town, similar to what has happened in Falmouth. But the problem is, it's almost like we're not learning from our mistakes, because you don't want to do the streetscaping after. You could have done all this work, or the work should be done prior to this. And secondly, if you're going to make an investment of this magnitude in a port, then in putting it in place, your forward marketing of the cruise ships is important. And whereas we will get the 1 and 2 ships that are diverted, the question is of it being a cruise ship port that is going to attract the numbers that can sort of justify the investment is going to be something that we're going to have to wait and see. But I think what we have to do is have a discussion with the Port Authority and see what their sort of master plan is on this development.
I mean, I hear you. And just listening to you, it reminds me of the Montego Bay Convention Center. Yeah? Was built and JTB brought in at a further date when it started hemorrhaging to do the marketing. Now, and we always speak about join up government. It is going to be expected that JAMVAC and the Ministry of Tourism that is going to have to market that and not the Port Authority. Yeah?
No, 1 second.
So-
no, remember, I think we may be a little misguided. My understanding is that the large part of the marketing of cruise is still Port Authority. Is that true? Or they no longer market cruise?
No, they no longer market cruise. It's in JAMVAC, yeah.
Okay, so the Port Authority doesn't go out and have the discussions with the cruise lines again, read this.
No, they do in consultation with us, but they're more port management. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Hence my point.
Yeah,
Chair.
no. Point.
So there has to be,
So the point you're making is in building it and getting your timelines, what is the marketing to get value from the port that we had?
Exactly.
Because if you are going to get four stops a year.
As Mrs. Roberts said, the liner that will be visiting, those visitors on that liner most likely will be going to Otrius because of a package that has already been sold. Yeah?
And around Kingston.
Yeah, around Kingston. But my thing is now you're building it in Port Royal. How is it that product, parallel to building out the port, is upgraded that you have the advantage of Port Royal and not flooding the place, as the chairman said, and you do not have a product that is, at the stage of selling. Yeah. So I'm hoping that I'll give her a chance. Hoping that at the same time the product is being developed at a pace that you can attract even additional. Because as now you don't have that product.
Chairman, the discussions I've been having with the Port Authority and the UDC is in fact for greater involvement of the tourism entities in preparing the town and the people for cruise shipping. The first ship is due in late January, and TPDCO is now being engaged to do some training of the local residents in tour guiding, for example. We have been asked to assist with signage and preparing the town and the people. There are plans for a tour within the town. Some persons will be going out, of course, to Kingston and maybe further, but there's also a tour for Port Royal itself being planned. And we are, in fact, assisting preparing the storyboards and all of that for that. So there is some engagement of the community, and I think a town hall meeting is being planned for sometime soon. I don't have a date, but they are.
How long now has this project been conceptualized and construction started?
I can't answer that, sir.
Construction started.
Yeah, turn off your mic, please. Yeah.
Construction started in August this year.
Construction of the
seawalk was
delivered
and installed in August.
in August, but there are some infrastructural work on the land side that basically started.
Yeah,
That's being done.
they came here
And
early
this
this
has
year,
been,
they were underway.
And hence my point when I raised it, the convention center. Because to hear you say that you are trying to get greater involvement, and I would have expected, Chair, that, and hence we said join up government, that they would have been more involved from the beginning, because at the end of the day, it is a product that you will have to sell. And hence why I'm being agitated so much.
Chairman, if I may.
Sorry. Member Dunn. Let me just go through. Yes. Member Dunn was actually finishing. And we jumped. Let me let him finish.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Roberts, I'm very excited about the Port Royal one. I think Port Royal holds one of the greatest potential for real success, as a greenfield project that is just going to start. Off the bat, this project is supposed to yield so much. Since we're at PAC, what I'd like to ask is, what is the product that we have for Port Royal? It's not the sand and sea. What is that product that we are looking at? And what is the marketing budget for at least the initial arrivals that we have to ensure that we can promote that particular product?
Member, if I could just on the follow up on the point PS was making, that we are engaged now with the UDC and the PAJ and the Jamaica Heritage Trust and all the critical stakeholders who have been at the forefront of this development, and to be honest, have owned this development to this point. I take on board, on behalf of the tourism family, the fact that obviously it's not pristine and we're not operating in a perfect scenario. To your question, member, in relation to the budget and the marketing plans and so on, I think those, at this point in time, maybe be better directed at the PAJ and the UDC, who are leading the project. The tourism family is now engaged and will continue to work with them to do some of the due diligence that the other members have cited, and to begin the process of ensuring that there is a product experience that will face the guests that will arrive in Jamaica via the port.
Thank you. I hope that product experience, which I think would be on the tip of everybody's lips, is the whole Buccaneer pirate thing. So this is where, I guess, with the training that is going to be done shortly with the residents in that area, I'm hoping to see people in those sort of outfit right along the town, and it will be persons, of course, from Port Royal would have gotten most of that. So that is a product that I'm looking at where the community is at the heart of that experience that the passenger will have from that. So as I say, I'm very excited. I have my own thoughts on how that whole thing could be built out and secured, because we have to ensure that the visitors are also not harassed. And the fact that we are so close to Kingston, when ships come in, a lot of persons from outside the area is going to want to come. How do we manage that influx to ensure that it does not affect the product that we're trying to create for that area?
Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up, we was only 2 days ago with the members of the UDC and the PAJ on this particular subject, and I can safely say that if the plans are anything to go by, it is going to be a fantastic product. And I think you may be better served having that kind of discourse directly with the UDC and the PAJ to get that full picture.
Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chairman. My question has to do with TPDCO. There are some 19 listed projects.
No, member, we're kind of going through. We're sort of doing the overview of the ministry first, and then we'll go into each agency so that we don't shoot all over. So I'll ensure you're first in line when we get there. Yeah, well, I have member Jackson, member Gambler, member Whitpile.
Just a quick follow-up. Sorry. Just a quick follow-up, Colin. Mr. Chairman, it hurts to see us keep repeating the same thing over and over. For all the response given about the Port Royal project, I don't get a sense that, one, there's a central coordinating entity that is pulling everything together to make the pieces jive and work. One is doing a little piece here, one is doing another, one is hoping that the other one does this. We're one government. we did it. My colleague mentioned about Montego Bay, which I'm coming to as a substantive item later on. What is it that we want to achieve? In this very Economy and Production Committee of this Parliament, when the Port Royal project came to us before, we all have a sense of what we want to achieve there. And again, the member mentioned about the integration of the community in the project to make sure that the economic they become a direct beneficiary of what is happening there. And I guess we're going to repeat the same thing as we do in Falmouth. So there's the port doing this here, and there's a disjuncture between the community and these investment things. One entity, Mr. JTB, you hope they are doing this, we hope that one is. Somebody somewhere must pull it all together as a project where all the critical pieces are monitored and coordinated to make sure that when the ship comes in January, everything falls into place. We can't keep on going over these things over and over again. My colleague here from St. Mary raised a question about the tourism package. What is it that we're going to sell? Right? We must know that before we even start dig the first thing in the ground, because we design it as a complete thing, and we know what is it we're going to offer. The people of Port Royal know exactly what is going to happen, their role in it, how they are going to benefit, etc., etc. And when you have the community consultations, that's when you can get their input to see how you can optimize the benefit from them. But we seem to be doing things in a kind of non-coordinated, upscotch kind of way. And it kind of bothers me, because we have been down this road before. So I will put that to the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Chairman, as the head honcho for the tourism industry, and everybody answers to her to see to it that all of these entities, and where you need ministerial involvement to bring the Port Authority, that is a critical element. That's when you go and hammer your minister and the Prime Minister to make sure that you get that support so that it all falls together. If you have a problem doing that, or they are giving you a problem, please let us know.
Chairman, as Director said, the UDC was given a central coordinating role for the project. The Port Authority is leading implementation of the various aspects. And I know that UDC is in dialogue with a number of government entities regarding the various components. The security element, I know the Port Authority is driving that along with the municipal police and everybody else. TPD is also involved in that aspect. So there is some coordination. UDC is also doing the master plan. They're doing the master plan as well.
Members, I'm getting from all that has been said, I think we not only have to invite, I think UDC, PAJ, but UDC as well. And I think maybe for the next, being that it is something of moment, after when we reconvene in January, maybe early, we have to have that discussion. Sorry, PS, I think I was just trying to speed up. I know where you're going with the response. All right, Member Witter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see here approved budget for Milk River Hotel and Spa. What is the nature of the work that is taking place there, and what is the intended outcome for that? Milk River Hotel.
No, as I said, remember, we're going to take them. You're talking about Milk River?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to take them, and we had not invited Milk River today. We had invited the 4 agencies which we'll take afterwards.
But I know the PS could.
Yeah, well, we were going to invite. We were going to invite Milk River as it, because there are some elements of that. If you want a general, I'm sure PS can give you a general idea.
Yeah. Is there a specific question?
No, Yes, as I said, I see an approved budget, so I was asking what is the nature of the work taking place and what is the desired outcome
Of
of
What page in the report are you? Just tell me the page in the report, please, sir.
page 2 on the PAC brief.
General statement about Milk River.
Pardon me?
You're asking for a general statement about Milk River.
Yeah.
All
What
right.
is the work taking place there now? And what is
Because Milk River, the component of Milk River is at page 125 onwards.
all right.
Yeah.
While we're
Milk River is functioning. Milk River Hotel and Spa and Bath Fountain Hotel and Spa are both on the list for privatization. And so we have an active enterprise team in place now trying to guide that process with the Development Bank of Jamaica. In the interim, both facilities are going concerns. Milk River does better generally than Bath St. Thomas, but both are going concerns. They're on the ministry's purview. And as right now, the work that has been done, the upgrading work at Milk River is essentially completed. It was driven by TPDCO. So we have upgraded the building itself, we have upgraded the baths, we put in a man lift, so persons with disabilities can now access the upper floor. We also did extensive work on the restaurant area, we did the community pool. So quite a bit of work has been done at Milk River over the past few years. Right now, we're just doing some final touches. We did some electrical works and, try to make the place more appealing, aesthetically appealing. So we have done that. For Bath St. Thomas, we are now, again, it's a going concern. Business is a little slower out there, primarily because of the challenges of persons to get into the bath itself. As you know, it's an alternative community service provided to persons who wish to go up the hillside and get their treatment that way. So there's a direct competition between the persons who offer informal spa services and the bath itself. That has been an age-old problem. But we continue to do business. And as I said, we are actively pursuing the privatization process. Right now, we are reviewing legislation for both facilities to see how best to amend to facilitate the privatization process. And privatization process means government will still be in control of the facilities, but we'll have private investors to develop and expand both facilities. So that's where thinking is now.
What about interest in terms of private sector interests?
We have expressed unsolicited interest in Milk River primarily. In fact, I think we had some interest in Bath expressed recently also. But they're both on the divestment list. And the policy, yes. And we have gone through 2 processes already, unsuccessfully. So we are yes. So we are going to process again. Yes, we have persons who have expressed interest, and in fact, I just know that at next enterprise team meeting, I got one yesterday, I think it was, or the day before. So we're going to ask the enterprise team review the request and decide how are we going to approach cabinet regarding the way forward. But we are in the divestment process, and ideally, it would be that they await the process, and when they're at the stage when we're asking for a proposal, they submit. But of course, these are unsolicited, and I guess you really can't stop persons from expressing their interest if they so desire. But for now, we're actively in the process. It is a slow process because we have to do a number of preparatory work before we can take them to market. So for Milk River, for example, the river, the flooding issues, we have to see how best to deal with these. The the roadway access to the facility. We were asked, they're both heritage sites, so we have to do heritage studies, which we have already, which we did a bit of it with Jamaica National Heritage Trust. We have asked to do some additional work. We are speaking with the Underground Water Authority. It's a new name now, but that organization, Water Resources Authority, we're speaking with them about them doing some research on the quality of the water for us, for example. So in order to take it to market, there are many preliminary steps, and they're time-consuming and costly, but we are actively working on the various elements as we speak.
As I've seen.
I'm going to just finish off the.
I've seen Lovers Leap.
So that we don't have to bring them back.
I've seen Lovers Leap move from nothing to something as a man from the South Coast, and I'm very pleased with what is happening there. I would love to see similar.
Yes, by divestment.
Yeah.
Let me just ask Dr. Spencer to say something about Lovers Leap.
You could add. No. Let me go through one by one. Just to throw it out there. You said, who's chairing the divestment committee? Same.
Williams. Mr. Williams. What's his first name? Mark? It's Attorney Williams. I've forgotten his first name in the moment. I'm sorry.
But the question. All right, but I would ask you this though. How long has this divestment committee been up, yes?
This divestment committee? We're in the second year.
No. I'm talking about the divestment committee for Milk River. This has been on the divestment.
You mean been on the list, not the committee? The committee is a
but you had
the list has been on the list for a very long time.
But it has had a divestment committee. You might have changed the members.
It has gone through 2 divestment processes that I'm aware of, and so they've had separate committees for each of those. And in both instances,
I'm talking about the ministry, though.
The ministry.
I'm just saying.
No, it's the same. No, it's the same one. It's the same one. In fact, we renewed it recently. It's the same committee, same chairman, same committee.
So that's the point I'm making. How long? I know.
And I said about.
No, but I think this has been undergoing divestment for about 5 to 10 years now. That's why I'm asking you.
We formed the enterprise committee about 2 years ago. This one. And
the previous one was Dr. R. Scott?
That was the board. That was the board of Milk River. There's always a board of directors. That's different. Yes, that's the board of directors. Yeah.
But with the same mandate?
No.
To divest?
No, we're in the process then. When Mr. R. Scott was the chairman of the board of directors of Milk River, we were doing upgrading works then. And at the time, he also had persons were writing to him, private interest, indicating their interest in acquiring a property, whether there's whatever the arrangement would be, lease arrangements as concessionaire. And it was out of all this interest that we actively began another divestment process, privatization process, which we're in. It's just as a long process, and it requires many preliminary steps before we can take it to market.
We have some other questions on Bath, St. Thomas, Bath, Milk River.
Pardon?
Member Stewart, Member Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you, PS. Chairman, thank you. Through to the PS. I just wanted to follow up as it relates to the development at the Milk River Bath. There have been some dialogue taking place as relates to the south coast there from Milk River going into the Alligator Pond area. Could you give us a little rundown as to where we are with it, in particular the Alligator Pond area, which is poised for development?
I don't think tourism is doing anything in that area now. The work we did with Milk River, we go as far as Farka Beach. That's the area TPDCO has been doing work, but I don't know if we're doing anything in Alligator thing at this point in Alligator Pond.
Are there no plans so to do?
Let me ask Dr. Spencer to respond, since TPDCO does a product development. Yes.
That works. Yes, Chairman, Member. The extent of our work, as PS mentioned, spans Farkas Beach to Milk River. I understand the question though, which is a broader discussion that is being had. It's a multi-agency approach. For example, our issues with Milk River first would have to do with the river and the river training and the issues surrounding that. And then there is certainly a plan for further development, but it's not being driven at the moment by the TPD or the Ministry of Tourism. We're partners in the discussion about how to expand that development into Alligator Pond. But I do know that there's interest in terms of Alligator Pond and what can be done in that location. In terms of the expanse of it from Milk River into, it's a much broader discussion.
Are there any other questions? Did I remember done?
Thank you very much, Chairman. With regards to, well, you know, I'm very happy as a Jamaican and as a member of this government with regards to tourism and the bright star that is shining for this country. With regards to, you have been in new markets in recent times, right? South America is one of that market. And
1 second, member done. Are there any other questions on Milk River Bath? If not, I would move on to you, member done. But I just want so we don't have to come back and we wouldn't invite. Yes, I'm going to carry.
Sorry,
on.
Chairman, could I just make a quick statement on divestment? Because sure. I think the issues, the difference, for example, that the member mentioned with Lover's Leap and some others that the TPD has successfully divested. The difference with that and the whole enterprise activity of Milk River and Bath is that what we have divested is the management of the space, and that's a much easier undertaking from the perspective of engaging the public. So for Lover's Leap, we haven't given up, the TPD has not given up its long lease on it. It is that we have divested the management of the space, which is the approach we will take for Rio Grande as well as Roaring River. So that's a much smaller undertaking than to divest as in fully
so
unload,
let me understand
offload.
you. Dr. Spencer, let me understand you though. That was my understanding of what was intended for Bath St. Thomas and for Milk River, that both of them, what was being divested was the management. I didn't understand. I didn't know that we would have been able to divest those entities because they are our properties in trust. So, you want to clarify?
What we're hoping to have had private investors, private investment in both properties. So whether it's to build additional rooms, new bath facilities, to modernize and invest. That's very different from getting a concessionaire to operate as is, which is what happens at Milk River. At Lover's Leap, TPD did upgrading and got a concessionaire to operate it, which is different.
No, in Lover's Leap, the management, the persons who took over came in and did capital works on it and also did management.
A lot of the capital works would have been carried out by us. Even subsequent to the management taking it over, we just redid the roof of the space.
Absolutely, but just for clarity, we're talking about the divestment in terms of management and maybe equity investment in terms of building, or long lease. We're not talking about divestment in terms of sales.
Exactly, Chairman. We're thinking of like a 49-year lease and investments, long-term lease and investments, right. Not sale. No, not sale. It's very clear in divestment documents.
49 years.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that is important.
Yes.
Because I'm just reading even the overview where you said it is a heritage site.
Right.
Exactly.
And it is the properties vested in the communal lands for the use of the benefit of the inhabitants of Jamaica.
Very much so.
And as the chairman is saying, previously, they dispose of the property itself was a no-no. Yeah? When Dr. Spencer spoke about divesting of the property itself, you have to clarify, is it lease or sale? Because is it still going to be held in the trust that it is, or are you selling the property as a going concern?
It's a public-private partnership arrangement we're seeking, and with a long lease and investments. The properties remain the government of
The
Jamaica,
Commissioner of Lands
Commissioner of Lands and the people of Jamaica. That is not being
But
changed.
what you're
And
looking
Cabinet was
for-
very, very clear about that.
Good. And what you're looking for is really an investor with a long-term lease that will invest in the product itself to build out the product.
Right, as opposed to TPD, because these are like five-year term.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything of a 49-year.
I just want to clarify.
Yes, yes. We're
Member
very
Dunn?
clear on that score, member.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was continuing. I'd also like to commend the Planning and Forecasting Department.
The who?
Planning and forecasting aspect of the ministry, because all targets seem to have been met, and we must commend good when good is there. But the question I want to ask is, I was on the point of markets and new markets, and we talk about South America that would have gone in recently. Are you looking at other new markets, and if yes, where are these markets?
I'm sure that director is very excited to respond to this question, so I'll ask him to so do. Yes, we certainly are.
Well, hold on. Members, as I said, I want to take JTB as a substantive item. And at some stage, I don't know if there are any other questions of the ministry, just that we can pass through, and then director will come to you in some more general. I have, member Vaz has been chomping at the bit for some time to ask a question on the ministry, right? And member Campbell.
Thank you, Chairman. Pierce, there have been reports generally that persons within the sector aren't able to get like jobs that they are qualified for, like top level management jobs. It's being reported in some hotels that people who have been there who are qualified for certain positions aren't able to get these positions because of the influx of foreigners that these particular hotels would bring in. There's also reports that some of these persons are brought in initially in the teething stages, but yet when probably after a year, when the operations begins to run smoothly, then these persons take over and the other persons are sidelined. Have you been hearing reports of this? And if so, what is the ministry doing to ensure that this practice stops and that we don't continue on that trend for the new investments that are coming in for the next few years to expand the industry on a whole?
Mike.
The PS ought not to answer a question like that, because we're talking about labor and relations and industrial disputes matters. Because I certainly the PS can't respond as to what is happening in individual properties, because these properties are not state-owned properties.
But with you, I think it goes.
Chairman,
let me hear you out.
At the risk of just sounding like an old tired bell.
Member Campbell. Member Campbell, except for the bell part. Except for the bell part.
Old and tired. Chairman, we are looking at budgets. And I come here and I'd like to focus on the ministry's budget. And yet we tend to focus a little too much on the administrative side of things. I have had a chance to focus on what the ministry's budget is all about. We are delving into matters which go outside of our remit.
No. Member Campbell, and as you said, we don't really want to think of it as an old tired bell, but the issue is, yes. But I think at the end of the day, I think that when we are having the discussions with the ministries in terms of the budget, what we're really looking at is also the policy that guides them. and I think just in the administration and generally speaking. And the point that Member Vaz brought up is a critical issue in the sector, in the sense, no, just generally speaking, in the sense that how the arrangements we make with investors coming into the country, how as a country we treat with these things, because it goes to the area of joined up government, because Ministry of Labor controls one section, the Ministry of Tourism the other. And if the two don't talk, you could end up with a situation where Jamaica truly doesn't benefit you. You hear about these investments, but it doesn't really mean much. When you talk about 9,000 hotel rooms and you talk about, oh, we earned $5 billion, the truth of the matter is the man on the side of the road sort of looks at you with a blank look, simply because they don't feel the benefit of it. And part of the reason for that is that we have got to address some of these issues. So I think the point that Member Vaz, it's in a general sense, and we're not asking PS to go into it in any specifics, but certainly the question, are we looking at the issue of employment of Jamaicans at all levels in the sector?
Chairman, we have a little section on work permit on pages 18 and 19 of the report. Of the main report, the main report, the one that's dated November 8, pages 18 and 19. And in it you will see that year to date, we have had 440 work permit applications, and of these we granted 392. If you look at the overall percentage of work permits to work in the tourism sector, it's very small. Maybe 5% or less than 5%. And primarily, these of the total labor employed in the hotel sector. And you will realize too that most of these persons where top management are foreigners, or where it's foreigners, the investors are overseas investments. And so I don't think it's reasonable to expect them not to want to have some key positions that they try to retain, right, under their control. That's one. Number two, even having said that, some are still employing Jamaicans. We're at Moon Palace I shouldn't have said Moon Palace. We're at a hotel just last week, and the senior people are Jamaicans. So there are many Jamaicans in positions in many of these properties. So it's not a wholesale thing as they make it sound. And even add them up, it really is only a small percentage of the total labor force. But being mindful of the need for Jamaicans to have greater opportunities at different levels of the tourism sector, we have a very active program of certification. And when we're doing the TEF segment, Chairman, maybe we can spend some time on the JCTI and the work that they're doing. TEF has been restructured and repurposed in a sense to focus primarily on human capital development. We have the link to this program. We're facilitating many Jamaicans to function at different levels in tourism. We have the JCTI that is geared primarily at persons in the accommodation subsector. And we are granting them international certification so that they can demand the jobs they're entitled to, and there's no doubt about their qualification, and so they can be paid at the level of their expertise as well. So we are very actively working in this area. You will never not have work permits as long as you have foreign direct investment in the sector. But we have a very stringent work permit review process. We have a committee. The committee is comprised of JHTA members, PICA, tourism, TPDCO, the ministry. So Ministry of Labor, and we go through a rigorous process. So we don't arbitrarily grant work permits, and we track the ones we grant, and when we say no, we do say no. So it's not as you may think, open and anything goes. No, it's a very rigid and rigorous process. And on the other hand, we're trying to empower our people to better qualify for the positions that they become available. Yeah.
Okay. All right, members, any other questions on the general?
About the categories of workers for the work permits. I see dancers are included in the list in the report, and I heard of singers. One of my colleagues frequently mentioned about going to one of the hotels and hear overseas Spanish singers singing reggae music in the hotel. So I just wonder if we had a shortage of that competence in Jamaica.
Again, member, tourism is a diverse and varied offering. You have persons from anywhere across the globe. The tastes vary. The hotels try to respond to their clientele. We have far, far more Jamaican entertainers in the tourism sector than you have foreigners. Far, far more. Right? Where I was the other day, at another hotel I was the other day, as a matter of fact, when I go to hotels now, I go to check the entertainment and see who are the performers. I was someplace else just the other day, they were all Jamaicans. Every night there were Jamaican acts on, not one foreign act for the entire time I was there. And that's not the same hotel I was mentioned earlier on, another property. So, you know, we are going to have a variety. Some persons require a different taste. That's what they require. And so you're in tourism. You try to please. But at no time are Jamaicans not very, very much a part of the offering. And our Jamaican entertainers are everywhere. Believe me.
Just in passing, I want to get a similar, really satisfying response when you speak about the consumption of Jamaican products like foods and beverages in the tourism industry, which is where the linkage arrangement comes. A lot of what are being imported. You know, people come to Jamaica not for a Spanish experience or a European experience. They come for a Jamaican experience, which food, music, culture is all part of that experience.
Again, as I said, the repurposed TEF. The linkages program is very, very alive and active in the TF. And we work very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, with RADA, with farmers themselves, because we are very keen on increasing the amount of local consumption in the consumption of local goods in the tourism sector. And it is happening. We have tourism providers already demand for goods and services. I'd be very happy today when Jamaica, the various sectors, are better able to respond to that demand. So we're trying to work with the Ministry of Agriculture in every way we can, with the manufacturing sector in every way we can, with the services sector, with entertainers in every way we can, just to improve the amount of local offering that tourism consume. And that is ongoing. That's ongoing. That's ongoing. And the strategies are deliberate. The strategies are deliberate. Linkage is that deliberate strategy. The human capital development is a deliberate strategy. And we're seeing good return. And of course, the work will only continue and increase. Yeah.
So just to continue on that point, PS, about the linkage. 15,000 more rooms by 2024. So as far as the linkage is alive and well, right? What is the benchmark that you have going forward year on year in satisfying some of these needs of the hotels to reach the point where we want to say, as you said earlier, when we go to a hotel, we see mainly Jamaican food in the hotel. What is the goals that you have and those benchmark each year?
In the tourism, in the TEP segment, we in fact have some data. So I'm going to allow Dr. Wallace to speak. But just to say that when we started this program, as you can understand, that there was very little base data available. So we did a preliminary demand study, And we just recently completed a second demand study because we're really trying to establish the base data properly so we can then see if we can then make proper projections as to the percent increase we would want to see and that we can measure. So we are going to be doing this series of demand studies over time so we can establish trend data and truly respond accurately to that question. But I'll ask Dr. Wallace to just elaborate some more.
Right, thank you, PS and Chairman and members. So the linkages program has been evolving and expanding over the last 3 years to the point where we have 5 networks along with the working groups. The working groups meaning manufacturing and agriculture. But we've added 5 networks: gastronomy, shopping, health and wellness, knowledge, and sports and entertainment. Because those are assets that we have here in this country, that as we develop more of them, not only will we build out the capacity to supply the tourism sector, but as a product itself, gastronomy for instance, that in itself can pull more visitors here to Jamaica. So it's multiple benefits that we can have by developing these components. Now, a lot of the work that we've been doing is providing access to the established operations, so websites, for instance, to provide a visitor easy access. So Taste of Jamaica lists every single restaurant across Jamaica. It filters them by what they provide. So if you want to find steak in Jamaica, if you're a steak lover and you travel to Jamaica, anywhere you stay, you can go on that app and you can tell where the steakhouse is within your proximity. And those are the features that we in tourism have created to allow access to the existing steakhouses who are here. We've created the top events for the entertainment sector, another app that allows you the visitor to find out exactly what's going on within a variety of categories, whether it's a health and wellness event versus a reggae event. They can go onto those applications and find out exactly what is available wherever they are, whenever they are in Jamaica. Providing access for farmers to get to the purchasing managers in hotels, we've created the Agri-Linkages app, which shortened Alex, agrilinkages.com. And that is where every farmer who wakes up in the morning and sees what crops they have available and the prices they want to set, they can go online and upload their account on this trading platform. And the purchasing managers similarly go onto this platform to purchase from all the farmers for the products that they want, and they know the prices. In fact, the farmers who are not internet savvy, we have we have contracted with RADA a team of officers, and we've paid to train them up and paid to create an office for them and paid for the computers for them and everything, for them to, via phone calls to those farmers, find out what their products are in the mornings, and then they upload to that farmer's account on the platform to facilitate the online trading between purchasing managers of these hotels and the local farmers. So the amount of work that we are doing in providing the exact linkages, because we have to be careful. We are in our lanes as tourism, and we're not going to go and do too much investment in agriculture, for example, but we are providing the link between tourism and agriculture. That's what we are investing in heavily, so that agriculture can supply to tourism. The same for manufacturing. We have speed networking programs where the manufacturers, they come with their samples of their products and they present to the purchasing managers in all the hotels on a biannual basis. Twice per year we have this speed networking program. We provide even funding for entrepreneurs who are in tourism to help to build out their capacity. So the 1 billion that we've provided via the Exim Bank to on-lend to SMTEs, small and medium-sized tourism enterprises, so that they can, there's no excuse anymore. Tourism is growing, tourism is increasing the demand. Here we have our productive sector. If you need expertise, we're going to give you that. If you need the research, we do the demand study, where we study what the hotels need, study the price points to know what is most lucrative for our local farmers to get into in order to supply and make money from tourism. So that demand study has been done, and that demand study has been published and everything. So, and we're seeing the results. I mean, the retention of a tourism dollar has increased since the last 3 years. And our minister speaks about it a lot.
No, by how much? No, I didn't.
So it was 30 cents to the dollar, 30 cents retention.
That's based on what? Where you got that data from?
WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council.
When did that is retention, that's a study done where? Here?
Right, here in Jamaica.
When did WTCC do the study that gave you the 30 cents?
Well, the details of the study I can get to you, but that's the information I have from the WTTC, and our minister speaks about it all the time.
Yeah, but it would be good to know, where the information comes from. But certainly, so you can get that study.
Yes, I'll get that for you.
Yes, yes. And you're saying that they have done a subsequent study?
Yes, so, and they reported on earlier this year.
Who do they work with doing this study? They would be working with the Ministry of Tourism to get the study done, or they're just doing it and...
Chairman, the details of the study I think we can get for you. We don't have it here. Obviously, we didn't expect to be asked for the detail.
I'm interested because
But what I do know is that the study was done, the details of it, so we can provide, and the report, the last report that I think that they published was, I believe, in February of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's public knowledge, so that also should be available online.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Continuing on that point, so the demand study is very important because at least you know what persons are looking for when they come to Jamaica. So in this linkage and the 1 billion that is provided, do you actually pick winners that would be immediate to the demand needs of those consumers, or you just pitch it out there generally?
Well, we encourage, and that's the whole point of the linkages, that has members from the various subsectors. So we have the head of the agricultural network, for instance, is somebody from the out of agriculture. What's his name? Right, Dr. Derek Deslandes, who is from CASE. And the head of the wellness network is Dr. Henry Lowe from, we all know from the health and wellness sector. So we get, it's a public-private partnership that, as we get the information, it's disseminated to the head of the manufacturing is Richard Pando. He now used to be Metro Siago, head of the manufacturers sector. So it's that connection that we have, that as we get the information from tourism where the demand is, it is spread into the manufacturers where and the producers, because we are working on the council with the heads of these subsectors. We also publicize it, and in the case of you mentioned the really premium ones. In the case of our demand study, we found out that berries were really low-hanging fruit, excuse the pun, but it was one of the opportunities, one of the best opportunities that we found. Is perishable, so in comparison to imports, you would never get the quality compared to if we supplied it locally. And so we went a little beyond our lane, outside our lane, to help to build out a few prototypes of strawberry farmers. We did the research overseas. We then built out 9 greenhouses and so on with 9 farmers to help to develop that a little bit more, just because we didn't have an established berry industry in Jamaica, and so we gave it a little bit more seed support to get it up and running, and that has been such a success story. They don't have hands to sell their products.
not trying to argue, but that's why when you mentioned well, I asked a question when they mentioned about steak, right? Take for instance in Jamaica, unless well, I'm not a popular eater outside of my home, but take for instance a steakhouse. I mean, a lot of travelers really like steak and a good steak. So would you encourage, say, I can't call names, but one of those international steakhouse or Longhorn or whatever, to set up in these high tourist belt in Jamaica, so at least it satisfies that demand. So the question, well, I asked the question to see if there is anything that allows you to pick these industries that has great potential because the demand is just there. So that's the reason why I asked it.
Well, our mandate and in reimagining tourism, if you look at the trajectory, the accommodation investment is going to be a lot from overseas investors. It has been for a few years, it will continue to be. And in fact, the direction they're going is higher end. The higher end all-inclusives, large all-inclusives are what is on the horizon. And what it means for us in the ministry is to ensure participation in that growth for Jamaicans. And so we are more keen on building out that linkage between what the tourists who come here will consume and what we in Jamaica supply. And so that's where our efforts are, not only in the supply sector, but in creating more innovation. So we have the SMTE funding program, plus the training to make sure our people, we spoke about it earlier, but to make sure our people are the ones who get the top positions. So the training and certification programs are another prong on the fork that we are using to create that opportunity for every Jamaican to become wealthy from tourism. The trajectory for growth is double the size we are today in the next 10 years. So 30,000 hotel rooms today, the projection is for us to have 60,000 hotel rooms by the year 2030. And that kind of volume and monies coming into the country, our job here today is to make sure that our people are ready to make sure that money filters into every single nook and cranny here in Jamaica. So the linkages program, the training and certification program that we do with JCTI, the funding program to catalyze our entrepreneurs, those are some of the programs that we are working on to get that done.
Just to follow up with the linkages thing, we know that it has been around for a while, but apart from the strawberry story, there are many products we know the hotel will demand, but we're still not seeing filtered down in the agricultural sector with regards to the production of some of these items. So I'm not sure where the breakdown is, if it's where RADA is with regard to putting out that information through their extension officers and giving the necessary support to ensure that farmers actually provide or supply these items that the hotel would be looking for. But there is still a gap there with regards to what you want and what is actually being produced, because farmers tend to just plant what they think they are supposed to plant and not necessarily are guided by what is in demand and the time of the year to actually plant it to get it ready for the time when the hotel would necessarily demand it. So I'm not sure. I know there's a linkages committee overall. I'm not sure if it is filtered down at the parish level to ensure that that level of production is being done. So I think you just have to look into that, probably communicate. I don't know if the communication is a problem or just the action or lack of support is a problem. So it's something you have to look into in order to strengthen that linkages body to ensure you're getting the desired results. It's not about just speaking about it, but to ensure that the farmers on the ground create that level of production that we need to supply the demand that these hotels would have. So it's a statement, not really a question.
Agreed, Chairman. Agreed. We're not 100% there yet. There's a lot of room for improvement. We won't rest until we get the result that we want, which is Jamaicans become wealthy from tourism.
Chairman, thank you. Through you to Dr. Carey. I am very delighted to know that our local farmers are benefiting significantly with this linkage, and especially my farmers in South Manchester. We heard the talk recently that the airplanes that were taking the tourists were taking in the foodstuff. I don't know to what extent that has been reduced significantly. And there were some challenges with the farmers having supplied the industry with their foodstuff. They were having some setback in terms of the payment. Has that been resolved or sorted out?
Yes, it's an unfortunate statement, especially with all the work that we've been doing to ensure that the tourism demand is supplied by our local farmers. And there's some way to go, so I can see why persons may sensationalize that in order to get more action in reducing the leakage that you mentioned. With respect to the hotels not paying on time and so on, that's one of the things that we recognize as a challenge for this, especially small farmers. When you're a big farmer and you have a big working capital, you have the capacity to allow for some credit. When you're a small farmer, you kind of need your pay to put in the next crop the next day. And so we recognize that. And one of the things that we have done with the same agrilinkages.com is we've partnered with banks to provide that credit in the system so that the farmers can collect their money the same day that they sell their products. So that is, we recognize that, and we're down the track in providing that solution.
I'd asked a question earlier of the PS, and she said she would have deferred it to Dr. Carey with regards to, again, the linkage. And if there are any specific goals or target points that you're looking, especially for agricultural substitution, import substitution in the hotel industry from 1 year to the next, so at least we can measure where we're going and to see if we're actually getting the result that the linkage was set up in the first place to achieve.
Thanks, and that, ideally, we would love to have those kind of KPIs per crop, for example. But right now, we just have the retention levels that we're using as an overall target of what we are trying to, how much more of the tourist dollar we're trying to retain here in Jamaica. And I gave you those metrics earlier. We started at 30% retention, and today we're at 40.8% retention. When you talk about an industry bringing in where we're targeting $5 billion US, then it's a significant bolster to our economy when we can increase those retention levels. We know we won't get to 100% retention because we don't make Grey Goose vodka or Samsung TVs or those. There will be some imports that we will still have to the sector, but overall we're trying to increase that retention as much as we can, and I'll get some targets to you at a later date, but I don't have them now with me.
I'm just talking about the linkages program, which is something I'm very interested in and believe it's at the heart of what we're doing in tourism. But again, the issue with agriculture, I think I'm speaking anecdotally largely, so I'm happy. I'd love to see how the demand study and the other studies, you have the most recent data, because anecdotally, they're still hearing from the farmers that there is a disconnect. That part of the problem is that what we're providing, there's still not that relationship, while better, is not what it needs to be. And I think Dr. Deslandes is a good person to chair that committee. However, you have to go back a step further, because part of the problem they're having is knowing how much to produce the year before, because what we're going through is cycles of glut and starvation, and then everyone is told to provide crop X, and then once they provide it, the volumes go up, the price plummets, and then everybody comes out and you're going through this roller coaster. So you said you're having a discussion with RADA. Have you gotten to a point where you're actually earmarking and helping with the planning of that element of the development of food stock for the sector?
Yes, in fact, the agri-linkages platform itself is supposed to assist with that, the kind of data that you'll be able to generate from that platform, where even what the purchasing managers request will go into that system for farmers who now are querying what is in demand and what prices are available. And to know what to plant, that information will become available. They'll see the seasonality of the demand over it's new, so by a season or two, you'll then have historical records to guide you towards the ebb and flow of the demand. So that we're modernizing the way that we think of agriculture. So you mentioned the droughts and the floods and so on. We are trying to get more precision farming in place, and we're supporting with greenhouses and irrigation systems and so on to get to that level. You see, we have to realize that the accommodation sector that's growing is coming from overseas investment. And these guys, one hotel that's here is part of a chain that has 100 hotels across the world. And they have standards. They're just at the first world standard of operation, where when they contract with a supplier, they want the product, not the SKUs. And so we as a nation have to understand that we have to step up to first world standards in order we can make big money, but we have to be at that standard. We can't expect so we have to get to that level of precision farming, of data-driven guidance to the way we plant and so on. And the good thing is that that's what we're doing in linkages. We're not only just providing the greenhouse and so on, we are actually training our farmers to be able to step up to that first world level to meet that demand.
Okay. All right. One last question on the ministry in general. I am looking through your book on page 23. I notice tourism destination development and management plan for the parish of Negril. Resort. I know it's a typo. This is what?
Chairman, this came out of a direct request from the Negril stakeholders. Earlier this year, we were invited down to a meeting, and it really was a discussion about the range of issues that affect the effective functioning of Negril as a tourism resort area. And as you can imagine, those concerns range from noise to garbage to drainage to lighting to all of the urban systems and infrastructural issues that would be required for effective functioning of a resort town. And so the feeling was that tourism ought to try to step in. Some years ago, we had actually done a comprehensive resort upgrading plan for Negril, which we have. But elements were implemented on the entire plan. So what we're doing is really looking at all of the urban systems, the support systems of Negril, and to see how best we can work with the various providers of services to better streamline and deliver the various areas of challenge. So we have been having consultations with the community, and we are doing, as it were, a diagnostic report, after which we will go into the actual planning and recommendation of solutions for the various issues. So we're working with the Chamber of Commerce, with the GHTA, and the private sector groupings in Negril. So we've had so far 12 stakeholder engagements that cuts across the various interest groups in Negril, and we're putting a report together now.
Pierce, I will say to you, I get a little concerned because we do studies and studies and studies, and quite frankly, as you indicated, you have a study that's about 4 inches thick that was done previously. I don't know that it has been as useful as one would want. And I attended, I think, one of the engagements, and I've been in discussion with them repeatedly. And why I'm a little concerned is while the grass is growing. Now, quite frankly, you have here, $10 million for a study. I can tell you that when we met in the first engagement, it was pouring with rain outside. And I said, come for a drive. You drove, and I said, look on the drainage in the grill. I think an estimate came, Mr. Wallace, well, the NWA has sent, I think, on twice. I think the initial one was $3 million to clear the drainage problem in the grill. So you could have done, that in itself could have been done. I'm just saying some of the basic things that the TF was set up to do. Some of these basic things have to do with, in these areas, issues such as drainage that could have been resolved. The West End Road, I know an estimate went in for that as well. And I go a step further, and I know that you're engaging now in doing some of the lighting down there. But as I said, we're doing these things, whereas there are some urgent matters that year after year come up and are not being addressed. And I think, members, one of the things that may be important to do, I don't know, I'm looking at the clock. We don't have, we're not, I'm intending that we finish at 1 o'clock. So I think we may be able to finish JTB, but we may have to come back and deal with some of the other issues. 1 second. But what I'd like us to do, PS, which was a little, I think, unclear here, there are a number of areas where the projects, which are sort of between TPDCO and TF, there's an overlap, obviously, because while there's a direct budget to TPDCO now, TF has an overarching. And what may be good is for us to, you have it here, so there's like a 500 million for, what was it? Resort maintenance in one, but then it is also, it may be in TPDCO and TF. What we want to do is disaggregate them, break down the expenditure of tourism by resort areas, and then just outline the projects that fall under it for the next meeting so that members can get an idea more clearly, because it's a little bit disjointed here. It's difficult to pick out what is what, and we can probably deal with that at the next.
To add to that, Chair, because I had made the same observation. And just an example, you have a road maintenance of 500 million, which is through TPDCO. And then you have another resort upgrading program, which is a beautification program, again, of 355 million. Then you go to TF, you have a streetscape in Resort Town, which is another 500 million. And a spruce up, which is another beautification out of TF of 150 million. So if we can get a breakdown of a more detail on these programs would be
because
good.
There's obviously some overlap, or some maybe same program, different nomenclature,
yes.
just to try and figure
Cut
out.
verges against bushing.
Huh?
Cutting verges against bushing.
Exactly.
And clearing as against bushing. Different nomenclature for seemingly the same
So just
exercise.
for us to be able to, but just back to the point, yes, I'm just saying to you here that this, I am very concerned about it because, and I know that even those persons that you're meeting with are very upset because these meetings have been going on for months, and just some of the low-hanging fruit, as you indicated, we have not really dealt with just some of the basic small things that no matter how you deal with it, these are going to be essential.
Chairman, as you heard, Dr. Wallace said that they haven't even received, they requested their estimates, but they have not yet received that for those low-hanging things that we really wanted to do. So I'm not sure where is the breakdown in that.
Right, that's correct, PS. Chairman, we have been requesting of NAA in that part of Jamaica, as you're familiar with, for a submission for the scope of works and the, what it will require for the drain solution. In fact, we've requested via the Chamber of Commerce as well to try and put some pressure on them, considering the Chamber will harness the stakeholders in the grill. And we're yet to receive that, and we're eager to supply, provide support for especially that project, because we recognize in a resort town you can't have a case where when it floods, when it rains, it floods.
All right, I will finish because we can deal with it after. I will look and see, because as I said, I was copied on some of these, so I'm not certain. But let's just clarify it after on the issues, because coming out of the initial consultations, there was a sort of tacit understanding that some of these issues, some of the street lighting issues, are small things, and I know that some are to be addressed, but let us see if we can clear it up, because a lot of this goes to the confidence. The second thing is, in terms of the TF as a fund, not as a body, the actual earnings from the TF tax, if we could get an idea of what that stands at now, given, and it will be a moving target, because as we know, the dollar is moving. So if we could get that, so that we can look comparatively at the budgets that are put, having this fund having been put into the consolidated fund. So we
Chairman, the figures are actually in TEF section of document. Their collections are there. But bear in mind now that the funds are collected and remitted to the consol fund. So TEF now gets their budget like the rest of the entities through the ministry. But the figures are there. Let me see if I can see what page.
Let me just get the...
Just while PS is looking.
Find the page on collections.
Yes.
Not the subvention.
Here, you have the figure?
PS, while you're looking, with your permission, Chairman, just clarify. My understanding was that though the funds are going to the consolidated fund, they are nonetheless earmarked for your budgeting. So it's a channeling, or is it at the discretion of the central ministry?
We get a warrant.
But the magnitude of the warrant isn't a function of the revenue.
A function of TEF's submission for the project and so forth. And so it goes through, just like every other entity on the ministry. TEF indicates submit their submissions, you get a ceiling, and you work a project within the ceiling. Okay. But the warrants have been coming steadily, so whatever is approved, they usually get that amount, yes.
But just to add that, and so TEF submissions are guided by that figure, what we anticipate that we will collect. So our board, when we're putting together our budget at our retreat, we are guided by that figure.
Still has to be approved by the Ministry of Finance.
So your budgeted figure for this year, what would have been what?
3.57.
So we are in the $4 billion range. This year we are at 3 point. What was sent to us by the Ministry of Finance was 3.
No. I'm trying to figure out what. In other words, how much the TF tax, the fee, on each arrival of a ticket purchased overseas is how much? $20, or was it doubled?
I think it's $20.
Hmm?
So remember that the tax that we charge, half of it pretty much goes to the JTB.
I know, but
and so that will go into their budget. Whereas for TE's budget, we get pretty much half of
total, it. Yes.
So our $4 billion will pretty much represent half of the collections.
Which is 20%.
It's
how much
$20 for every airline passenger and $2 for every cruise passenger.
Right.
But $10 from the airline passenger in the previous arrangement was allocated to the JTB. Now we collect and give everything to the consul. JTB sends in their budget. We send in our budget. But what we are guided by is about 50% of the total collections, and our board meets and looks at the projects that need to be done, looks at the direction we're heading in as far as reimagining tourism, the linkages and so on, and we put together a budget for about $4 billion.
Well, at the start of the financial year, what was your wish list? Was it the $4 billion or more?
This financial year, we had submitted for more than $4 billion. A few projects, the Closed Harbor Beach project in Montego Bay, the Ministry of Finance decided to, rather than give us the funding, to then pay over to UDC, who are the implementation agencies, to just give it straight from Ministry of Finance to that ministry, I think it's MEGJEC. And so, in effect, our budget was reduced by that amount, and so we ended up starting with a budget of $3.6 billion.
I remember in the supplementary there was still an amount for that project.
For Closed Harbor is just at 20-something%.
Yeah.
Closed Harbor Beach.
Yeah.
So, in the supplementary coming.
All right. Who is the project manager on that? That's UDC.
UDC.
Okay, so TF has nothing to do with that at this
point. We still have our MOU with them. In terms of the actual transaction, it's going straight from Ministry of Finance to MEGJEC. But as far as a partnership for the development of the project and oversight, our project team, for instance, still goes down to their site meetings to ensure that the project.
So that was the only thing. So at the beginning of the financial year, you had a
there were
wish list of over.
There were two others. There was a project with the district constable program because it was so successful with the first tranche of constables that we trained up and provided for the resort towns. We wanted to double those numbers, and so we had that in our budget, and they decided to give it straight to the Ministry of National Security, similarly to what they did with Closed Harbor. Pardon me?
What's the benefit of if it is a program that you initiate?
Right, the Ministry of Finance looks at it that we have the MOUs from tourism with these ministries, and we will continue to oversee them, but from a transactional standpoint, they felt it was smoother to do it that way.
Yeah, I think all of these, even the breakdowns, if we can just get them and spread them out just so that we can see. They're all here, but just for clarity. All right, so members, I'm going to let us
add to that list, Chair. There's the program, the one with the community. There's another one here with community. Squatter community, the squatter regularization, which is $400 million. Yeah. All right. That's a breakdown of the communities and the works done and all of that.
Yeah. Sure.
All right. We're going to take JTB, and then as soon as we finish that, we'll close for today and take. So I think we had actually started that ball rolling. Yes, but I was just saying we were hoping to get all the information together so that we could take them at the next, unless it is of.
Just as you're noting what you have just mentioned, Chairman, but in the supplemental information that is provided, the one dated November 2019, I saw a listing of allocation for constituencies and I was struck by the number that I see printed in the report, which is, yes, but it is less than what my understanding was for the constituency of South St. Catherine. So maybe when they're coming back next week, they will indicate if there was an error in the printing.
Because they found none?
Because I found it reported less than what? Page 33.
I'm sure they can find that.
Yeah. But I want them to find the page, but find the amount that is not.
I'll not have you badgering the witness. Director, I think it was member Dunn had led off with a question about new markets.
Yes, sir. The strategy that we have put forward for the foreseeable time of the next 3 years includes ventures into new markets such as South America, you mentioned, Japan, India, China. We have at the moment deprioritized to the back end of that period China, partly because there are some readiness issues for the Chinese traveler that we believe the destination needs to understand and undergo. We have prioritized Latin and South America, and in that vein, in the last 12 months, we have increased air service from Copa from 4 flights per week to 11 flights per week. We have engaged successfully LATAM Airlines, who will start flying to Jamaica 3 times per week from Peru, starting December the 2nd, 2019, which is next week. And we are in dialogue with Avianca out of Colombia as well. And so, in addition to the airlift, we have also intensified our underground marketing in terms of engagement of tour operators, travel agents. Quite a few of our hotel investors are from the region, and so they have been extremely involved in that effort. On the Far East, particularly Japan and India, we have over the last quarter, we have been able to appoint a representative company in Japan, as well as a representative company in India. We just came back from the annual Japan Expo. It was a successful venture from the perspective that the operating entities or the lead entities within the Japanese government that govern tourism was expressly noting our selection for representative in Japan as an excellent one based on their knowledge of the market, their experience in the market, and their experience representing other destinations around the world. And so we feel that we have a winner in the company we have selected through the process, and we are going to continue to push for the increase in the arrivals from the Far East, particularly from Japan. Similarly with India, the appointment was only made in the last quarter. The Indian, that company and several of their tour operation companies have been to Jamaica on an immersion trip in the last 6 months to begin to understand the nuance of the destination, as well as to understand how our product is and how it operates, and how they can find that nexus to create packaging for travelers around the world, and particularly out of India, or connecting over India to be able to get to Jamaica. So there is a tremendous amount of work that we have put in over the last 12 months to understand these marketplaces and to ensure that now that we have ventured into them, that we can in fact activate them effectively and grow them over time.
Could you, Mr. White, just elaborate a bit more? What are the deficiencies or what needs to be done in the market in respect of China?
China. The the Chinese market have some very specific requirements in terms of their travel groups. One, tour guiding, language is a big one, and there's a tremendous turnoff for the Chinese traveler to be guided on a tour by somebody speaking English. The menus or the eating habits of the Chinese is significantly different than our own and than that of the menu appetite of the hoteliers in Jamaica. For example, the Chinese typically eat for breakfast what we eat for dinner. And so we're at opposite sides of the menu offerings. So that also becomes one of training. The expectation of the Chinese in terms of the decor of their rooms, of their greet, and how there are certain favors meaning things that they prefer to have, that I believe our hoteliers we have had these discussions with the GHT, and there is some amount of time that is needed to get to that level of understanding and readiness. And then there's just an overall appreciation of the fact that most of the Chinese that come to Jamaica today are probably not for touristic purposes. And so the learnings are slower than expected because they're not necessarily participating heavily in the hoteliers and in the attractions. And so we just believe that there needs to be a capacity building period, and we feel that there is enough on the plate with Japan, India, and Latin America. Latin America, in terms of a population center, is more than the United States, for argument's sake. So there's a lot to go around in terms of work and effort.
Mr. Chairman, why I have a particular interest in China? One, it's the largest population in the world. Two, it has the largest, or not necessarily largest, but significantly large growing high income earners.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, it has over the long haul great potential.
Absolutely.
And so we have to prepare for down the road rather than the immediate benefits that can accrue now. That said, we have a lot of investment in the tourism sector through the Spanish hotels.
Yes.
And my understanding is that a lot of the investors in the stores in the Spanish are vertically integrated. They own hotels,
Mm-hmm.
they have travel agent, they have airplane, and all of those. In trying to overcome some of those inherent obstacles as you see them now, are we engaging the Chinese from both an investment standpoint to facilitate or to enable us to overcome some of those obstacles that you point to that we have? For example, Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking, in much the same way that the Spanish investors come and they build the hotels and they bring the people in, they don't have a problem with filling their hotels, right? Could we look, or have we been looking at engaging Chinese investment, not necessarily through even state entities, most of the business in China are state entities, but they have substantial private Chinese investors, to invest in the infrastructure, the hotel building, in much the same way that we could sort of replicate, because we want to look at the medium to long-term potential.
Yes.
Population size, income spend, etc. Is that part of the menu going forward in respect of the Chinese and the difficulties that you have pointed to that we now have?
I would say yes, it is. It is a constant dialogue between all of the tourism family, and particular with our minister, in relation to the fact that we are always surveying the global landscape for investment opportunities. And we're always looking with a keen eye, not just for for investment for the development of rooms, but also for the development of the wider product. And so, yes, the Chinese presents a unique opportunity, no doubt. But there are, there are many concerns or challenges, if you will, and I think that we have to continue to fully understand the vastness of some of those, not just the opportunities, but the challenges and the challenges they potentially can present, so that when we make the plunge, we are not doing it, without fully understanding all the potential downfalls or uptakes. We must take them all together. One of the biggest challenges, that I haven't mentioned is the fact that the airlift capacity out of the Far East is not the easiest thing to be had. And certainly from a direct standpoint, no airline flies from China or from the Far East for that matter, direct to this region. They connect somewhere else. That in and of itself is also a challenge, because then you have to be able to drive enough demand to fill better than half those planes, which carry 450, 480 passengers. So it is with those kinds of understanding and the fact that we do have a market to protect if we continue to grow. Just to continue to grow in today's state, we have a budget to manage that, and we try to massage that budget as much as possible to put more into market development. But that becomes increasingly challenges as it is, because as you go further afield, it becomes more expensive to market, more expensive to buy media, more expensive to do everything else that you do. And so the challenges are great, but the opportunities don't go away. So we are not going to cower away from those opportunities and don't try to bring them to life.
All right, Madam.
Not sure if this question is for the PS or Mr. White, but recently there was a very high-profile collapse of an tourist-related entity out of the UK.
Thomas Cook.
The questions are, one, did we have any fallout here in Jamaica from that sudden departure? One. Number two, do you have a contingency budget any at all to deal with this sort of eventuality? And three, what were the experiences learned from this, and how did Jamaica itself handle this quotation crisis?
Firstly, the fallout was very minimal. Because at the time of the collapse, the period of service that was committed to Jamaica by Thomas Cook was almost complete. I think there was 5 weeks of rotations remaining, which would have amounted to roughly about 1,650 seats lost. Our estimation, based on discussions with the trade and with the industry here, is that the majority of those 1,650 passengers, potential passengers, because they were operating at about 92% load factors, would have been rebooked through another tour operator or another airline to still keep their vacation as was planned. As it relates to the future loss of the overall capacity that they would have provided for the 15 weeks of operation of the summer, to your third question before I answer number two, I happened to have been in London at the time when it happened, meeting with airline companies, and Minister was joining me shortly thereafter, and we were able together to have a tremendous amount of meetings with the other carriers, particularly the legacy carriers, who have committed so far to replacing at this point in time about 80% or 85% of the seat capacity that Thomas Cook would have flown into Jamaica next summer already. So there is still a small gap, I think, of about 1,200 seats that we're still seeking carriage for, or that we can redirect through other gateways in Europe to still get those passengers to Jamaica. So in effect, we were able to, within a week of the announcement, provide clarity to the industry in Jamaica that we were able to cauterize the potential outfall for Jamaica, but more importantly, we're able to regain the capacity in seats for the next summer period, which is a period that Thomas Cook would have operated to Jamaica. Your second question was, sorry, that slipped me now. The budget. They typically, no, we do not necessarily plan for contingencies like this, to be very frank, because everything we have is put into ensuring that we meet our numbers. What we do try to ensure that we have is a level of open relationship with all of our partners, trade partners globally, that we're only a phone call away, whether us to them or them to us, so that we can maintain a level of fluidity in the communication stream.
Just on that point, and that's a great point, because I get to understand that even in that collapse, I mean, Jamaica was able to come to the aid of other countries close by in order to facilitate it there.
Well, what the English system has what they call ATOL, which is a travel tax that is charged for every British passport holder traveling out of the UK that they pay for, and if something like this happens, then that tax takes care of either restoration of them back to their home or compensation for any loss that they may have suffered whilst traveling. So that funding was put to use in terms of repatriating travelers, not just from Jamaica, but from other parts of the world back to the UK who were left stranded because the company stopped operating. So from that perspective, you know, our role was really just to ensure that we maintain communication with the trade and with the local industry to ensure that if there was any connection needed to be made, any relationship that needed to be managed, that we were there to provide that support.
All right, members, on that note, I think this is as good a time as any for us to adjourn the meeting today. On your behalf, let me just thank the PS and the ministry for attending. I see no reason why we shouldn't be able to just tidy up everything next week. And what I would do, members, if there are any other questions, because I know some things were pending, it may be useful, members, if you do, to just ask the clerk to submit those questions prior to the meeting to the secretary, so that the ministry is able to prepare, because what we don't want is to come to the next meeting and then ask questions and then we have pending things. It's the intention to sort of complete all things next week. So any questions that may arise, just submit them and they'll pass down to the ministry, who can take it from there. I want to thank all of you for attending. It's Morrison from the Ministry of Finance, and meeting is now adjourned till next week, Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
This is PBC Jamaica. Happy Child's Day.
Parents, how do you think your children feel when they are beaten?
I feel so sad when my mother beats me.
It makes me feel so angry.
I feel embarrassed and I